Sorry, I got cut off there again, having battery problems. I'll try to pick it up where I left off. And we're in the third paragraph of part one of Posterior Analytics, where Aristotle's made this very important distinction. Actually, if you look at the last sentence of the second paragraph, this distinction that he makes where he says, we should perhaps say that in a manner he knew, in a manner not. That's a very important statement, I think, because it may be a contradiction. That is, in a manner knowing and in a manner not knowing. Doesn't that mean knowing and not knowing at the same time? And that doesn't seem to make sense. And I think we'll have to think about this distinction. And certainly, I think it's something that Socrates, on the basis of what we read in the Meno, would perhaps be disposed to disagree with. That is, wouldn't he say you either know something or you don't? You can't both know and not know at the same time. But it may be a useful distinction, and Aristotle goes to some length to try to describe what he means. This sense some things we know in a manner, but in a manner don't know. And it seems to be very important because if we look at the third paragraph, he says if this distinction is not drawn, we are faced with a dilemma in the Meno. Either a man will learn nothing or what he already knows. So what does he mean by this notion of in a manner knowing and in a manner not knowing? Well, he gives the example in the third paragraph of knowledge of the general rule that every pair is even. And I think what he means by that is that if you take any number and you add it to itself, you will get an even number, even if you start out with an odd number. I'm pretty sure that's what he means. Mathematics not being something I know much about, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. So a man is asked, do you know or do you not know that every pair is even? He says he does know it. The questioner then produces a particular pair of the existence, and so a fortiori of the evenness of which he was unaware. So you think you know, or you have a general rule or a general principle, that is that every pair is even, or that every figure that has its interior angles equal to 2 right angles is a triangle. That is that general universal knowledge. And you say that you know that, but then somebody can come up with a particular case that you didn't know in the particular, and then the question is, did you know that particular case? And that seems to be what he's dealing with there in the third paragraph, the last part of part one of the Posterior Analytics. I think that's what he means, is that if you know the general rule or the universal proposition, in a manner you know all the particular instances, and in a manner you don't. Let's say that we know that all men are mortal, that we feel that we know that as a principle. What does that mean when it comes to particular people of whom we're unaware? There's a guy named Joe in Montana, and I've never experienced him. I don't know him at all. Do I know that he is mortal? Well, I think Aristotle's saying in a manner you know, because you know the general rule about human beings being mortal, and in a manner you don't because you're not familiar with the particular man, Joe, who lives in Montana. Now, when we become aware of Joe in Montana, I think that that's what he refers to as the recognition knowledge, I think, in the second paragraph. That is, that recognition knowledge of the particulars actually falling under the universal and therein already virtually known. So you could say that if I know that all men are mortal, I virtually know that Joe from Montana is also mortal. But I don't recognize it explicitly until I actually perceive this particular person, Joe. So I know virtually that he's mortal because I know the general rule. But I don't know the particular in its fullest sense because I have not recognized Joe. I have not perceived or experienced Joe in any way. So what are we getting at here? Okay. What is the point here, and how does it connect with the problem in the Meno? Well, if we look on further in the reading, look into part 2, much of the discussion rests on what Aristotle would call premises or principles or starting points. Because if you think about that, think about Joe in Montana, or think about the particular pair, like 7 and 7, adding up to an even number. We can really be said, I think his idea of knowing in a sense and not knowing in a sense makes perfect sense. I mean, I think we want to hold on to that. If I know that all men are mortal, someone can't say, oh, you didn't know that Joe from Montana was mortal. Well, I didn't know it in the fullest sense because I wasn't aware of Joe from Montana, but once I actually experience and come to know him, I instantly recognize that the rule applies to him as well. Just as if I know that a closed three-sided figure whose interior angles equal 2 right angles is a triangle, I know that general principle or proposition, then faced with any particular triangle, even though I wasn't aware of that particular triangle before, I instantly recognize that it conforms to the rule, and I know something about that particular triangle. I know the fact that triangle or that figure is a triangle, or the fact that that man, Joe from Montana, is mortal. So what's the crucial thing here? I think the crucial thing is, how do I know these general premises or principles or starting points, what Aristotle called sometimes archai, that is the first things, the primary things. How do I know them to begin with, and can I really be said to know them and to grasp that we do know these basic, fundamental, universal principles at all, that we truly know them, is in a way to solve Meno's paradox, because then we have a starting point for our inquiry. Then we can use our general universal principle knowledge to go on and to learn more things about the world. So I think we have to focus on that. I mean, do we actually know those things? And if we do, how do we come to know them? And that, I think, is the theme for the rest of the reading. Now, one of the, in a demonstration, what the Greek apodeixis, the notion of demonstrable knowledge, that is, knowledge that has an account, has a proof, has an argument behind it, knowledge that can be demonstrated, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. If you look, for instance, on the beginning of part 3 of the Posterior Analytics, the first paragraph, what about these primary premises, these starting points? He says, some hold that, owing to the necessity of knowing the primary premises, there is no scientific knowledge. Others think there is, but that all truths are demonstrable. Neither doctrine is either true or a necessary deduction from the premises. The first school, assuming that there is no way of knowing other than by demonstration, maintain that an infinite regress is involved. That is, scientific knowledge is knowledge which is proven for Aristotle. That's what this particular translation, scientific, means. It doesn't mean having to do particularly with natural science, physics, or chemistry. It has to do with knowledge which is actually derived from other knowledge and is proved. Its legitimacy and its truth is proved on the basis of other things. So let's say that in Euclid's Elements, the Pythagorean theorem, coming as proposition 47, is scientific knowledge in the sense that it's a claim about triangles which is actually proved on the basis of other things that have been proved. So then the question is, well, there have to be starting points. There have to be places that we begin demonstrations with. Do we demand also that they be proved? And if we do, are we not involved in an infinite regress? Because to prove them, we will need to assume other things, and those prior assumptions themselves would need to be proved, and you can see the problem. There would be no starting point. So what is the status of these starting points, these principles, these premises that we need, as he said in the beginning, to move on? Because all knowledge proceeds on the basis of pre-existent knowledge. So that's the question that we'll be focusing on now.